Hey, welcome back to another Retro Roadshow video. This is the IBM PC Model 5150, otherwise known as the first computer in the IBM PC series. This machine was released in 1981, although my particular machine I think rolled off the factory floor about a year after that. And this was the first computer that IBM offered to consumers, home users, small businesses, whatever. Everything prior to this from IBM, for the most part, with a few weird exceptions, had mostly been mainframes and what they used to call mini computers, which were more like refrigerator-sized units that you would run in your business. The PC was a landmark computer. It was not the first personal computer. There was already a thriving market with competitors like Apple and Commodore and Tandy's TRS-80 line and a bunch of others. The market already existed, but when IBM rolled out this machine in 1981, they established a new standard, the IBM compatible, which continues to this day. Literally every PC compatible machine that you could go down to Best Buy today and purchase is a direct descendant of this computer, running an Intel processor or maybe an AMD or competitor chip that's based on an Intel processor, and all of those processors are just refreshes and iterations of the 8088 CPU that's in this machine. Now, in addition to being an important historical computer, this machine also introduced some other important things, like the IBM Model F keyboard. Now, this Model F keyboard is kind of amazing. It weighs, I think, almost 6 pounds. It feels shockingly heavy when you pick it up. It's thick, it's made out of metal and thick plastic. The keys sound fantastic. It's a classic clicky-clacky keyboard. It's a really great keyboard. There's a reason that these sell for hundreds of dollars on eBay when they pop up. But there's also limitations with this keyboard, primarily just in the fact that it was IBM's first attempt at a keyboard designed for the consumer marketplace. And some of the layout choices that they made with this keyboard were later changed with their later keyboard that is the famous Model M keyboard. The Model M is not just a legendary keyboard, it's arguably, a lot of people would say, is one of, if not the greatest typing keyboard ever made. The Model M is a big deal. People love their Model Ms. They're still being made nearly 40 years later. The Model M is an amazing keyboard, and it was the direct successor to this Model F. And the Model M introduced the layout that we're all familiar with today. Any full-sized PC keyboard today is essentially a direct descendant of the Model M. But the differences between the Model F keyboard and the later Model M are small but really important. So for instance, the Model F uses a very skinny shift key on either side. The Control and Alt keys are in odd positions where you wouldn't expect them. The Control key is where you would kind of expect a caps lock key to be on any modern keyboard that was descended from the Model M. And there's other little weird variations of the design in this one that were later changed by the Model M and virtually every keyboard to come after it. And so, on one hand, I love that I have a true original Model F keyboard, just like the one that shipped with this original PC when it was new. That's awesome. It kind of completes the set. But on a more practical level, I love typing. I'm a touch typist. And touch typing on a keyboard where the shift keys are slightly off from where I expect them to be, where Control and Alt aren't in the places that my muscle memory has become accustomed to over the decades, it just throws me off. I end up looking at my fingers when I'm typing on the Model F in a way that I never do when I'm typing on basically any other keyboard that was descended from the Model M that came out after this. Now, you might say to yourself, okay, well, that's not a problem. Just get a different keyboard and type away. And you're right. That's the right way to do it if you have a keyboard that isn't working for you. The trick here, though, is that this is the first IBM PC. And because it's the first model in that series, the keyboard that it can use is actually fairly limited. It uses the same plug on the back of the computer. It's a big chunky round connector. It's the same physical plug that later IBM computers used, including computers that used the Model M keyboard. The catch, though, is that electronically they're different. The keyboard used in these early PCs carries different signals over the wires in that same connector compared to later keyboards. So if you're going to plug a different keyboard into one of these early IBM PCs, it needs to be a keyboard that can literally be switched into a mode that will work with this machine and not cause problems. Now, fortunately, years ago when I was digging through the bins at our local e-waste place, I actually found a couple of early kind of generic or third-party PC style keyboards. They're both modeled on the famous IBM Model M, so they have the bigger, wider layout that I'm much more accustomed to, and maybe you are too. And they're old enough that both of them have a switch on the bottom that lets them switch from what was called PC or XT mode, which is the style of keyboard that this machine would use, or into a later AT mode, which was the electrical connectivity style that later machines in this series used. So they're new enough to have the layout that I like and old enough to work with this machine. That's a great compromise. But there is a problem, and it's a kind of a fun problem. It's a problem that I enjoy. And the problem is this. These are the two keyboards that I'm talking about, and the problem is that they are both absolutely disgusting. They are filthy, like so gross. They really look pretty gnarly. I'm going to pause here for a moment because I'm probably going to cut away to some B-roll showing exactly how nasty these keyboards are. So here are the two keyboards that were pulled out of an e-waste bin. The first is made by American Research Corporation, and I suspect it came with an ARC Turbo personal computer, which was almost certainly an IBM PC clone from the early or mid-1980s. And as you can see, this thing is just gross. It's filthy. It's in pretty rough shape. But all the keys are there, and it has a great key sound. So my hope is that it'll be functional and pleasant to type on after it gets a little deep cleaning. And then behind it we have the SunTouch, which is another early PC style keyboard. Both of these are definitely modeled very closely on the IBM Model M. They have the same shape, the same layout, even the same indicator lights with the same layout. Everything's basically IBM Model M style. And this one also has a really nice sound and feel. It's very clicky. So I haven't taken either of these apart, but I'm almost certain they're both using mechanical key switches. There's probably no rubber membranes under there. And so I'm really quite excited to get these things cleaned up and test them and see how they feel. So what's going to follow in the rest of this video is just some footage of me cleaning the hell out of these things. I'm going to take them apart. I'm going to take off all the keys. I'm going to do one at a time. I don't want to mix up parts from these two keyboards. But by the end, if all goes well, we're going to have two beautiful, full-size Model M style keyboards that we'll be able to use with this first generation IBM PC. So my Model F can continue doing duty as a beautiful museum artifact, but when it's time to actually do some real typing, I'll have much more comfortable keyboards to use. So stick around. This should be a fun exploration of the process involved in restoring these keyboards, which I don't even know if they work. I've never plugged them into anything. So now that I have a computer of the right vintage and a need for at least one of these to work, well, let's see what we can do. So stick around.
bed. Gag me with a spoon.
Are you done recording? Or?
Nope, still recording. Takes a lot of work to fix an absolutely revolting keyboard. All right, well, it's been a few days getting this keyboard taken apart, getting all the keys out, getting the presumably decades of disgusting crud scraped off of the plate underneath the keys. It took some time, and I also needed to let the keys soak in a solution of hot water and dish soap for a couple of days. I recycled that water a couple of times just to get all the crap off, and then it takes time for the keys to dry, and I had a fan pointing at them. It's a whole process. When we at the Retro Roadshow talk about the labor of love that goes into finding and repairing and restoring the things that we exhibit, this is a good example. This keyboard was so absolutely disgusting when I found it in that e-waste bin. It's no wonder that it had been tossed in there. It was absolutely unusably gross. And at this moment, it actually looks pretty great. I was able to get the whole thing apart. The plastic case is actually a little bit brittle. You can even hear it squeaking a little bit. The case tabs that hold it all together, a couple of them snapped during the take apart, but that's fairly typical for old plastic like this. But I was able to get it all back together. The keys are back on. The cable has been cleaned. Everything's been cleaned. It looks as close to new as this thing is ever going to get again. And at this point, the only thing I haven't done is test it. I have no idea if this thing even works. So it's been a whole lot of work. I really hope it was not for nothing. And the only way to proceed here is to actually plug it into our first generation IBM PC, the 5150, and see what happens. And you might notice on screen here, there's a bunch of logs scrolling by. This machine for the past 7 days has been sitting here serving as a web server, hosting a simple web page. It's going to be going offline in a little while when we're done with this test. But right now, a couple of my colleagues are having fun attempting to DDoS this machine. They're spamming it with millions of hits just to see what happens. So hi, Bruno, thanks for that. And I regret to say its time as a web server has come to an end. So let's go ahead. We're going to power the IBM off. We're going to plug in the American Research keyboard and let's see if it works. So here goes nothing. Unplugging the original IBM keyboard. Plugging in the big chunky cable for the American Research keyboard. There it goes. And I think I mentioned this previously, but there is a switch on the bottom of the keyboard here, which puts it into XT or AT mode. These keyboards, they use the same connector, but different generations of IBM PC wired those connectors differently. So I have it in XT mode, which theoretically should work with this PC. So yeah, let's see what happens. Ooh. All the status lights on the keyboard just blinked. That is a great sign that the computer has recognized the keyboard and just saw it. And now we see the computer starting to boot up. Because this machine has been upgraded with the maximum amount of RAM that it can support, a full 640 kilobytes, it takes a little time as it calculates and checks all of that RAM when it's powering up. But we should see it start to boot up here in a moment or two. Here we are. We have gotten to the DOS prompt. The machine is booted. And so now all that remains is to actually test this keyboard and see if it actually responds. So why don't we come in here and see what happens. Look at that, it works. I'm going to load up a text editor that'll let me test the various keys on this machine. There we go. Let's go Alt-F, make a new document, and here we go. A quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Folks, that is a successful test, and I've got to say, this keyboard, despite being as gross as it was when we started, it's really nice to type on. I need to do a little research and find out what key switches American Research was using in these keyboards, but it's nice and clicky, the keys feel great, and the layout on this one is a lot more comfortable and familiar to a typist in the year 2024 than the layout on the original IBM keyboard that came with this machine, the Model F. So with that, I'm going to declare this a successful test. I'll do more tests of every key on the board. I'll put it through a full diagnostic, but I'm delighted. This is a great keyboard. It works well, and we took it from disgusting e-waste to what will now be a permanent part of the Retro Roadshow exhibition. So if you want to get to use this formerly gross and currently great keyboard, come on down to our next exhibition where we will be displaying this machine, and it's going to be a blast. Thanks for watching. I can't hold this face forever.